Shalom, shalom, Most High in Christ bless to everyone. Happy Sabbath. Today is January 20th, 2024. We are in the house once again. All praises to the Most High. We give honor and glory to our Father in heaven. We give honor and glory to Christ our King. We say shalom and Most High in Christ bless to the bishops all over the globe, those that are standing and leading the nation of Israel into righteousness, into the kingdom. Likewise, we salute the deacons, the captains, the officers, the soldiers, all the men in their respective places, no matter how old or how young. Likewise, we salute and say shalom to all the women, that being the mothers, the wives, the daughters, the sisters in their respective places. We say shalom to everyone belonging to the nation of Israel. We are going to start off reading the laws as we generally do. When we read the laws, we don't provide any commentary. We just simply read the scriptures. We do this for about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, give or take. And then we get into the topic. And it's the topic of the day where, we're going to read, we're going to expound and so forth. But the reading of the law, it's just the reading of the law for 5-10 minutes. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, watch the entirety. If you are not here with us, definitely reach out to find out how can you be here in the house of the Lord with us, to fellowship with us, to grow with us, to build with us. With no further ado, let's get into the laws. The laws, Ecclesiasticus chapter 39, verse 1. But he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High, and is occupied in the meditation thereof, will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient, and be occupied in prophecies. He will keep the sayings of the renowned men, and where subtle parables are, he will be there also. He will seek out secrets of grave sentences, and be conversant in dark parables. He shall serve among great men, and appear before princes. He will travel through strange countries, for he hath tried the good and the evil among men. And we're not at 606 because we had completed the whole round. So I wrote down wrong. So just start at 1.
To know there is a God. Exodus 20 and 21. I am the Lord thy God.
Exodus 20 and 2.
Okay, 22. Let me start from the top. To know there is a God. Exodus 20 and 2. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage.
To know that God is one. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord.
To love God. Deuteronomy 6 and 5. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might.
To fear God. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 20. Thou shalt fear the Lord thy God. Him shalt thou serve, and to him shalt thou cleave and swear by his name.
To sanctify God's name. Leviticus 22 and 32. Neither shall ye profane my holy name, but I will be holy among the children of Israel. I am the Lord which hallowed you.
Not to profane God's name. Leviticus chapter 22, verse 32. Neither shall ye profane my holy name, but I will be hallowed among the children of Israel. I am the Lord which hallow you.
Not to destroy objects associated with God's name. Deuteronomy 12 and 2. Ye shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess serve their gods, upon the high mountains and upon the hills and under every green tree, and ye shall overthrow their altars. and break their pillars, and burn their groves with fire, and ye shall hew down the graven images of their gods, and destroy the names of them out of the place. Ye shall not do so unto the Lord your God, but unto the place which the Lord your God shall choose out of all your tribes to put his name therein. Even unto his habitation shall ye seek, and thither thou shalt come.
To listen to the prophet speaking in God's name, Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15. The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me. Unto him ye shall hearken.
Not to try the Lord utterly, unduly. Deuteronomy 6 and 16. Ye shall not tempt the Lord your God, as ye tempt him in Massah.
To emulate God's ways. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 9. The Lord shall establish thee an holy people unto himself, as he hath sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord.
To cleave to those who know God. Deuteronomy 10 and 20. Thou shalt fear the Lord thy God, him shalt thou serve, and to him shalt thou cleave, and swear by his name.
To love other Jews. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. Thou shalt not avenge, nor bear any grudge among the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord.
To love converts. Deuteronomy 10 and 19. Love ye therefore the stranger, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Not to hate fellow Jews. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 17. Thou shalt not hate thy neighbor in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor, and not suffer sin upon him.
To reprove a sinner. Leviticus 19 and 17. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor, and not suffer sin upon him.
Not to embarrass others. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 17. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor, and not suffer sin upon him. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 20. Them that sin rebuke before all, that others also may fear.
Not to oppress the weak. Exodus 22 and 21. Thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppress him, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Not to speak derogatorily of others. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 16. Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people, neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am the Lord.
Not to take revenge. Leviticus 19 and 18. Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, for thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord.
And we will start with 20 next time, Lord willing. Start with 20 next time, Lord willing. All right. Okay, so the title of today's class, current issues facing African Americans in 2024. Current issues facing African Americans in 2024. And I kind of wrestled with that title. I was asking myself, should I use African American or should I use Israelites? And I thought, you know, they who don't know, what they do know is African Americans. So let me use African Americans was my thinking, was my rationale for the sake of those that don't know. All right. But of course, what we teach here is that you so-called African Americans, you so-called blacks, you are Israelites, you are the descendants of the people written about in the pages of the Bible. Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, you descended from Jacob. You descended, I'm speaking specifically about the Negro, the African American, the Black. You descended from Jacob's fourth born son, Judah. That's who we descend from. All right, but that's not my title. My topic today. So let's get into what we are discussing today. I'm going to start off with an article. Okay. So we're going to look at this article, written August 8th. I apologize. This article written August 8th, 2022, Racial Discrimination in the United States. Human Rights Watch, ACLU, joint submission regarding the United States record under the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, okay? And so, in this article, they point out a plethora of things, a lot of things, where racial discrimination is found in the United States. It starts off, the United States signed the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination in 1966. President Johnson administration noted at the time that the United States has not always measured up to its constitutional heritage of equality for all, but that it was on the march toward compliance. That's in 1966. He says it's on the march for compliance. Okay. The United States finally ratified the convention in 1994 and first reported on its progress in implementing the convention to the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination in 2000. In August 2022, the committee will examine the combined 10th through the 12th periodic reports by the United States on compliance with the convention. So they're going to look at these reports to analyze to see how close are we getting to the goal, to the objective, eliminating racial discrimination. Okay. Let's go down here, starting at the next paragraph. In its 2000 report, the year 2000, the United States stated that overt discrimination is less pervasive than it was 30 years ago. Okay, that's in quotation marks. Overt. So it being in your face is hard to identify, as it was in the 60s, in the 50s, and what have you. But admitted it continued due to subtle forms of discrimination. So this report is saying, hey, it still exists. Okay. Right here. The forms of discrimination reported to the United Nations by the United States included inadequate enforcement of existing anti-discrimination laws, ineffective use and dissemination of data, economic disadvantage experienced by minority groups, persistent discrimination in employment and labor relations, segregation and discrimination in housing, leading to diminished educational opportunities for minorities, lack of equal access to capital, credit cards and technology, discrimination in the criminal legal system, lack of adequate access to health insurance and health care, and discrimination against immigrants, among other harmful effects. The United States also noted the heightened impact of racism on women and children. Okay, so all right here, right here to the end is a mouthful of different things where racial discrimination continues to exist. Now, let's go to the document itself that this article is coming from. So here is the actual document, okay? Here's the actual document. International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, okay? And this is the English version. There are 4 different versions. There's English, Spanish, French, and one more I didn't pay. I forgot. Okay, but let's go to, here we go, page 18. We're going to start right here. This is, as far as the document goes, this is page 18 of the document. This is paragraph 70 that I want to start with. We're going to start with paragraph 70, okay? Is that large enough? Yeah. Okay. A little bit bigger. There we go. Is that even better? Okay. There we go. All right. Make sure we see it. Here we go. As part of the United States program to increase public awareness of human rights obligations, this report will be published and made available to the public through the government printing office and the depository library system, as was done with the U.S. reports on compliance with the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane, and Degrading Treatment or Punishment. Copies of the report and of the convention will also be widely distributed within the executive branch of the United States government and the federal judicial authorities. So just showing that, hey, you can get this document. Now let's take a look at this. Factors affecting the implementation, meaning what's in the way? Why do we still have such racial discrimination and disparities? So here we go. And there's a list. Okay, we're gonna read through all of this. Although there has been significant progress in the improvement of race relations in the United States over the past half century, serious obstacles remain to be overcome. Overt discrimination is far less pervasive than it was 30 years ago. Yet, more subtle forms of discrimination against minority individuals and groups persist in American society. In its contemporary dimensions, discrimination takes a variety of forms, some more subtle and elusive than others. Among the principal causative factors are, now here we get this list, okay? Number 1, or A, as they put it, the persistence of attitudes, policies, and practices reflecting a legacy of segregation, ignorance, stereotyping, discrimination, and disparities in opportunity and achievement. This they put as the number 1 problem, right? This is what they call the number 1 problem. Persistent attitudes. And it was in there before I pressed the record button, I'd said to you guys, I said, oh man, I'm reading this book and the author writes something, and what he wrote, now I remember what I wanted to share before I pushed the record button. What he wrote in the book, he says, hey, it takes a long time to change the attitudes of individuals. So that's that's what I wanted to share before I pushed the record button, right? So, but these things, this is a huge problem, even according to this document. Okay, moving on to number 2, inadequate enforcement of existing anti-discrimination laws due to underfunding or federal and state civil rights agencies. Resource limitations cause delays in investigation, compliance review, technical assistance, and enforcement. This is not only do we have these attitudes that won't change, the attitudes is a contributor to the lack of resources to change the direction of where we go in resolving race relation problems. Okay, let's go on to 3. Ineffective use and dissemination of data on racial and ethnic issues and information on civil rights protection, right? Ineffective use. So the information is not getting out there in the way it should be. Okay, either it's misinformation, it's deliberately held from the people, it's disinformation, you're lying to the people. So, right, too many persons, I'm right here, too many persons do not believe that racial discrimination is a common or active form of mistreatment, right? So when you try to have a conversation, you get the conversation is shut down because the response, it gets shut down because the people will say, that was 100 years ago. I've never been discriminated against. And so they're looking at their own personal experience in life opposed to examining what does the survey say? When you ask 100 people, what are their responses? Don't be dismissive of their response if they say, hey, I was discriminated against. Like the 2 people not too long ago, the 2 truck drivers. It was about 6 months ago or so. They were in Shoney's or something. And one brother left to I think to go freshen up, shower up or something like that. When he came back, he said, just order anything for me. You know, whatever you order it for me too. And so he gets back and the waitress, she had not yet waited on him. And I think 30 minutes out, some time had gone past. And so here these 2 individuals are fighting for, because they've been discriminated against by this Caucasian woman. And their story is being hard, it's hard to have been heard because it's being dismissed, which is what this point 3, letter C, is saying. Okay, too many persons do not believe that racial discrimination is a common or active form of mistreatment and are therefore less supportive of race-conscious remedial actions. Moreover, many minority groups do not have adequate information about government-funded programs and activities because information is not distributed in languages they can understand in often remote areas throughout the United States. This is particularly true for some African, Indian, and Alaska Native populations. So let me highlight this part right here, information. This part right here, in languages they can understand. Okay, so as we continue on, one of the other key things of issues facing African Americans is education. Okay, and so a lot of the times it's the way the education is being disseminated, meaning the teacher trying to communicate to the child, the teacher lacks the knowledge, the understanding, the skill in cultural relevance. The teacher lacks that ability to connect with the student in the classroom, understanding that student's cultural background. Okay? D, economic disadvantage. In the contemporary United States, persons belonging to minority groups are disproportionately at the bottom of the income distribution curve. While it is inaccurate to equate minority status with poverty, members of minority groups are nonetheless more likely to be poor than are non-minorities, right? It says, we know the data allows us to take a best guess at you. Because of the color of your skin, you're poor. It may not be the truth, but we can take a best guess. Because of the color of your skin, you don't have no money. So I can treat you however I want to treat you. I'm a police officer, and if I abuse you, what you gonna do? You don't have the money to get any kind of legal representation. If you come into my restaurant and I tell you I don't serve niggas, I'm sorry, colored people, then what you gonna do? Because you don't have any money for legal representation. That's what D is saying. Okay. He goes on. It is also true in the United States, as elsewhere, that almost every form of disease and disability is more prevalent among the poor, that the poor face higher levels of unemployment, that they achieve lower educational levels, that they are more frequently victimized by crime, and that they tend to live in environments, both urban and rural, which exacerbate these problems. So not only do you lack funds, you lack resources, you lack connectivity to improve your situation is what they're saying. Letter E. Persistent discrimination in employment and labor relations, especially in the areas of hiring, salary, and compensation, but also in tenure, training, promotion, layoff, and in the work environment generally, which is why we have the saying, we the last ones hired and the first ones fired, right? So this report is saying that's not just a colloquial phrase, that's a reality. That is a statistical reality, is what this report is saying. Over the past few years, for example, complaints have been leveled against several major employers, including Texaco, Shoney's, General Motors, Pitney Bowes, and Avis, the car rental place, right? Continued segregation and discrimination in housing, rental and sales of homes, public accommodation and consumer goods, even where civil rights laws prohibit segregation and discrimination in these areas, such practice continue. So despite the Fair Housing Act that was established under, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we get we get some laws or policies from Richard Nixon. I think we get some policies from Johnson. I think those two presidents provide us with some policies, some legal policies that are supposed to shape or improve, enhance the housing situation for African Americans. But this report is saying, despite what ink and paper say, the reality is from real estate agents, lending services, the Negro is struggling with the ability to get a house, even when his credit score is looking good. Okay. Where am I at? I'm at G. Lack of equal access to business capital and credit markets. Minorities continue to have difficulty raising capital or securing loans to finance a business. Without sufficient access to such financial markets, minority entrepreneurs will continue to start and grow businesses at a much slower rate than their white counterparts. This problem further lessens the prospects of wealth creation in served communities, thus perpetuating the cycle of poverty that disproportionately affects minorities. Right? So the banks are not going to give you the money. Bank of America is not going to give it to you. Wells Fargo is not going to give it to you, right? They're not going to give it to you. You got it. You don't qualify. Or they're going to give you a loan with such horrendous terms that if you, forgive the crudeness, poop wrong, right? Now you're in jeopardy. You're in double jeopardy, which is what happened with the 2008 housing crash. A lot of the loans, all those harsh, bad loans, who was the main one that was taking those loans on? Meaning applying for those loans. It was the Negro. It was the African American applying for the loan, obtaining the loan to get the house. And as soon as the housing market crashed, it was the African American that got hit the hardest. Because why? All overnight, the mortgage shot up, doubled. If my mortgage, if I'm barely holding on, able to pay $600 mortgage because I work at McDonald's, and I'm not trying to diss any of my people who work at such jobs. That's not what I'm attempting to do, but I'm attempting to make the point that if this is the condition of our society, of our culture, where we work at McDonald's, we work at Walmart, we have these medium to low paying jobs, is what I'm trying to say. Medium to low paying jobs. And so with my medium to low income, I can afford $600 for mortgage. And now overnight, that $600 is turned into $1,200. You didn't kick me out the game. I can't afford that. I can't afford it. Okay. H. Lack of access to technology and high technology skills. Despite the rapid development of the internet and other information technologies, minorities have participated at low rates in the so-called new economy because they lack the skills necessary to fill the numerous technology jobs created every day. Technology-based jobs are projected to be a large percentage of new jobs that will be created over the next 10 years. If minorities are not trained with information technology skills, a large number of workers will be unable to benefit from the tremendous wealth generated by this segment of economy. If you don't know how to code, you don't know how to program the computer, you don't know how to set the computer up, I'm sorry for you. You know, because Schnucks, Walmart, you know, they getting rid of the help me out, the lane, the grocery lane, and it's self-service lane. So we take 4 clerks, turn them into 1, because now the people gonna do the work, meaning the customer. The customer himself is gonna do the work. So whereas I hired 4 people to check you out, that's what checker lane, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas I had hired 4 people to check out the customer. Now I'm gonna turn that into 1 person and speak loud.
Yeah. Not only that, they have the customer to work for themselves actually, right? Mm-hmm. And then charge more for the product.
And charge more for the product.
And give you less.
And give you less, right? So we lack technology and high technology skills is what this report is indicating, okay? Lack of educational opportunities, largely because of the persistence of residential segregation and so-called white flight from the public school systems in many large urban areas. Minorities often attend comparatively underfunded and thus low quality primary and secondary schools. Thus, minority children are often less prepared to compete for slots in competitive universities and jobs. While efforts to dismantle segregation in our nation's schools have enjoyed some success, segregation remains a problem both in and among our schools, especially given reductions in affirmative action programs. Now, this report is, I think, the year 2000 is when so this report is 20 years old, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken. Yes, this report is 20 years old, 24 years old, okay? So it's 24 years out of date, shall we say, right? But some of these things are still the truth. Many of these things are still the truth. Especially concerning what we just read, education, okay? And I've always argued, I'm an educator by vocation. And one of the first things we had to learn, they shared with us when I was going through the program, was how the education is funded. And so the way they broke it down is that the local government pays the lion's share for that school building or that school district. The local government pays the lion's share. Then state government pays like 15%. And then federal government will pay like 7%. So federal government distributes the least amount of money. Local government pays the most amount of money. So if you have mom and dad, Caucasian, moving out of that local community, then that local school district, local school doesn't get the tax dollars that it would get. Right? And so now that means the only folks that are left there are the African Americans, the Negro. And if the Negro doesn't have a well-paying job, you know, he's middle to low income earner, well, then that's all the tax dollars that the local government can provide for that school. And this is where inequalities come into play. And there are no policies as of yet that I'm aware of that changes this reality even from 24 years ago. J. Discrimination in the criminal justice system. The negative overall impact of the criminal justice system on Blacks, Hispanics, and members of other minority groups is another barrier to our achieving the goals of the convention. Various studies indicate that members of minority groups, especially Blacks and Hispanics, may be disproportionately subject to adverse treatment throughout the criminal justice process. When we saw, again, this document being written in 2020, we have seen in 2012 with was it Tamir Rice? Was it Tamir Rice in 2012?
Yeah.
With the Skittles in Arizona.
You're right. That was Trayvon Martin.
Trayvon Martin.
Oh,
Trayvon Martin. You know, so we have seen an ongoing, never-ending injustice from the way, and then the police officers get off. Paid leave. You know, because Darren, what was the man's name? Darren, for Mike Brown, Darren Wilson,
Yeah.
right? He quit and went somewhere else to work. Right? Okay. High incarceration rates for minorities have led to political disenfranchisement of a significant segment of the U.S. population. Moreover, many have raised concerns that incidents of police brutality seem to target disproportionately individuals belonging to racial or ethnic minorities. Disadvantages for women and children of racial minorities. Often, the consequences of racism and racial discrimination are heightened for women and children, whether in the criminal justice system, education, employment, or healthcare. Women and children suffer discrimination disproportionately. Startling high incarceration rates for minority women and children have placed them at a substantial social, economic, and political disadvantage. I think we got a couple more. Healthcare. Persons belonging to minority groups tend to have less adequate access to health insurance and health care. Historically, ethnic and racial minorities were excluded from obtaining private insurance, and although such discriminatory practices are now prohibited by law, statistics continue to reflect that persons belonging to minority groups, particularly the poor, are less likely to have adequate health insurance than white persons. Racial and ethnic minorities also appear to have suffered disproportionately the effects of major epidemics like AIDS, For example, in 1999, 54% of new cases of HIV infection occurred among Blacks, even though they make up less than 15% of the population. Or let's bring it up to date. Most recently was COVID. That's the most recent epidemic, or was they call it epidemic or pandemic, right? But we hit in the States, we got hit the worst. Okay. And then I think, okay, just a couple more, two more, I believe. M, voting. While the Voting Rights Act has made it possible for Blacks and Hispanics to obtain an equal opportunity to elect their candidates of choice to local, state, and federal office, the federal courts since the early 1990s have become more restrictive in permitting race-conscious apportionment of voting districts. Thus, many of the gains made by minority voters in the 1970s and 1980s have been jeopardized. Okay. And they argue about that all the time. I mean, you take Roland Martin. If you listen to Roland Martin, you hear about how gerrymandering is, all the gerrymandering that they are doing, and so on and so forth, all the different tactics to keep the Black person from voting. Okay. Discrimination against immigrants, whether legal or illegal, recent immigrants often encounter discrimination in employment, education, and housing as a result of persistent racism and xenophobia. Some also contend that U.S. immigration law and policy is either implicitly or explicitly based on improper racial, ethnic, and national criteria. Language barriers have also created difficulties of access inter alia to health care, education, and voting rights for some. Okay. And so with this one in, I heard recently that there was a Mexican, which Mexicans are Israelites of the tribe of Issachar, right? But a Mexican, no, that wasn't you that told me this. That was, okay. This was down in Texas, homeless, was begging for some money. And the response was, don't have any money. But at the same time, was spotted, the individual who said, I don't have any money, was spotted putting dollars in their pocket. And so Issachar started going off on the individual, calling the individual nigger and this, that, and the third, right? When the reality is, we are brothers. That Mexican, which the Bible says is of the tribe of Issachar, that Mexican is the African Americans, which the Bible says is of the tribe of Judah. You're brothers. So we got to figure out how to come together and work together. That's the point of what I'm trying to say there. All right. Okay. So now, that is the document where this article, right? This article that we started off with has built upon, right? So it's building, it's all that it wants to say on that article, as well as other sources. Let's go here. So, reparative justice for legacy of enslavement. So this with each one of these bullets, with each one of these, the author or authors, I didn't look. Let's see. Okay, I don't know who wrote this. I don't know if it's a joint venture or what, but they attempt to provide some solutions after each little blurb. And so let's read just a few of this and then and carry on. Article 6 of ICERD establishes the right to remedy and to seek just and adequate reparations for acts of racial discrimination, such as enslavement. So this is being one of the main things that they want to argue for is reparations. This is what they are fighting for in this article, right? This is one of the main things they're fighting for is reparations. So I'm simply providing information. I'll give my thoughts in the second half of the class. Right now, I'm sharing what others have said as we identify the current issues facing African Americans in 2024. Okay. I want to scroll. Okay. Come right here. All right, here we go. Black people in the U.S. continue to endure severe economic disadvantages in wealth and income and suffer from discriminatory policies in land and home ownership, denial of health care, and segregation in education. The resulting disparities are staggering. The average white family has roughly 10 times the wealth of the average Black family, and white college graduates have over 7 times more wealth than Black college graduates. Let me read that part again. The average white family, meaning you graduated with just a high school diploma, has roughly 10 times the wealth, more wealth, than the average Black family. And college graduates have over 7 times more wealth than Black college graduates. So we can get all the education you want. It's not tipping the scale. It's not offsetting the balance of power, of economic might. Okay. With the current pace of growth in wealth among Black families, it will take an estimated 230 years. 230 years for Black families to obtain the same amount of wealth that white families currently have. About 21% of Black people in the United States live in poverty. So the Black race is said to be 13%. But of that 13%, 21% are living in poverty, which means that 79% are above the poverty line. So 79% have to do what they can to bring everyone up. Everyone meaning all belonging to that racial pod.
Yeah, which
Speak loud for the microphone.
even with that, you said 230 years?
230 years.
That's 79% has to pull up within that time. That's what I'm looking at.
Within that 230
Yeah,
years.
within that 230 years.
Right,
That is just.
right.
Just playing to slavery, actually. So
Right.
we will, as long as we don't do what we're supposed to do, we will stay in this perpetual slavery until Christ comes back. That's what that's saying.
Correct. Correct. Okay. So continuing on, about 21% of Black people in the United States live in poverty. More than double the rate for white people. Although these wealth disparities are rooted in historic injustices and carried forward by recent and ongoing practices and policies that failed to reverse inequitable trends, to date, the U.S. government has not done nearly enough to address the lasting and contemporary racially discriminatory effects of structures of inequality or racial subordination. So reason why I emphasize that word structure is because what we're dealing with are systems. So this word structure, another word are systems, policies, systems, the way the things are set up. Okay. It is also openly admitted to failing to provide sufficient resources for civil rights enforcement, even though ICERD requires restitution, compensation, and restoration. So this article is saying, hey, by your own admission in this document, you admit that you have failed to provide those different entities, office here, office there, office here, office there. You have failed to provide those resource entities with resources for the people to close the gap. You admit. So why should we? I'm speaking on behalf of the people of the article, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to come against you. I'm speaking on behalf of the people of the article, not on behalf of my opinions. Okay. Let me continue on here. All right. So here is what they suggest, right? To address ongoing structural racism, the legacies of enslavement, the U.S. should establish a federal commission by legislative action or executive order to study and develop reparations proposals for the descendants of enslaved people. Appropriate effective resources for federal economic and civil rights programs to address long-term structural racism and provide assistance to low wealth and low income Black communities. Okay. So now, make a little notation of these two bullets, right? That this article, the authors of this article, what they're saying is we still have to go to NASA and plead with NASA to help us out. Right? That's what these two bullets are saying. Okay, excuse me one moment.
Right.
Let's get back to it. Okay. Now, let's go to this next article. Okay. So, one of the things discussed dealing with structural racism is wealth and income. That was one of the things talked about concerning structural racism. Here, by this Brookings article, okay, examining the Black-white wealth gap. This is written February 27th, 2020. Okay, so this is not old. Right? A close examination of wealth in the US finds evidence of staggering racial disparities. At $171,000, the net worth of a typical white family is nearly 10 times greater than that of a Black family, $17,150 in 2016. That is your net worth, 17,000. The average Black family, $17,150. That's your net worth in 2016. Okay. Gaps in wealth between Black and white households reveal the effects of accumulated, you know what? I think I didn't write this down. I think this would be a good time. Let me see if this, we need to define what wealth is. Okay. This one says, okay, let me try different. Let me try different. Bear with me. Let's use this one. Okay. Here is how Wikipedia defines wealth. Is the abundance of valuable financial assets or physical possessions, valuable financial assets or physical possessions, which can be converted into a form that can be used for transactions. This includes the core meaning as held in the originating Old English word well, which is from the Indo-European word stem. The modern concept of wealth is of significance in all area of economics, and clearly so for growth economics and development economics, yet the meaning of wealth is context dependent. A person possessing a substantial net worth is known as wealthy. Net worth is defined as the current value of one's assets less liabilities. Okay? Your assets, the things that you own that you can convert, right? Because up here, right, can convert for transactional use.
Trade.
Right? So a house might be an asset, or your house might be a liability. Your car might be an asset, it might be a liability. So when you go to sell your house, will you get money back? Will you be able to put money in your pocket, or do you owe money out because the house is in such shambles that no one is willing to pay you to convert what you possess? No one is willing to pay you a sufficient amount that you have abundance in your pocket to go and purchase another house plus whatever you were trying to do. Because if you sell your house and now you have no house, now Now you don't have the money. Now you have lost out on one of the basic fundamental things to survive, having shelter. Okay. All right. So let's go back there. So with that understanding, again, what does this Brookings report say? At 171,000, the net worth, right? So they have assets such that they can convert, and those assets can put in their pocket a sum of 171. Whereas the Black household, the average Black person, family, can only convert things at a monetary value of 17,000. That was in 2016. Okay. Gaps in wealth between Black and white households reveal the effects of accumulated inequality and discrimination, as well as differences in power and opportunity that can be traced back to this nation's inception. Absolutely. Because this country was built, the United States, this country was built on slaves. It was created, it was formed with slavery in mind. Okay. The Black wealth gap reflects a society that has not and does not afford equality of opportunity to all its citizens. Efforts by Black Americans to build wealth can be traced back throughout American history, but these efforts have been impeded in a host of ways, beginning with 246 years of chattel slavery and followed by congressional mismanagement of the Freedmen's Savings Bank, which left 61,144 depositors with losses of nearly $3 million in 1874. These are Black people who lost their money. Lost it. The violent massacre decimating Tulsa's Greenwood district in 1921, because they had all that wealth and that was a thriving community of African Americans. Okay, a population of 10,000 that thrived as the epicenter of African American business and culture, commonly referred to as Black Wall Street. And discriminatory policies throughout the 20th century, including the Jim Crow era's Black codes. Right? So Black codes were installed, what? To keep you down, to keep you from rising up as a people, as a race. Strictly limiting opportunity in many Southern states. The GI Bill, the New Deal's Fair Labor Standards Act, exemption of domestic agriculture and service occupations, and redlining wealth was taken from these communities before it had the opportunity to grow. These are the different ways that you were forced to not grow. So imagine you're on a racetrack and you're running and you're in a relay race. And the racers, in terms of it being a relay race, these are generations. Dad, granddad, grandson, great-grandson. That's the passing of the baton, right? And your opponent sticks out the foot, causing the runner to trip and fall. That's what these different things are. These different things is the opponent sticking out the foot, causing the runner to trip and fall, so that my nephew, my Caucasian nephew, right? So that my Caucasian son, so that my Caucasian, right, can have an advantage.
Disproportionate advantage.
A disproportionate advantage. Right? These are the policies. This is the structural racism that impedes our ability to grow in this system. Okay? So
This history matters for contemporary game.
I didn't want you. This history matters for contemporary inequality, in part because its legacy is passed down generation to generation through unequal monetary inheritance, which make up a great deal of current wealth. In 2020, Americans are projected to inherit about $765 billion in gifts and bequests, excluding wealth transfers to spouses and transfers that support minor children. Inheritance account for roughly 4% of annual household income, much of which goes untaxed by the US government. But you up here, you only have 17,000, and you're whole, and 4% you're going to transfer to the next generation in this relay race. In this relay race, you only have 4% of that to when you pass the baton off. Okay. Just how large and persistent are these racial wealth gaps? As Figure 1 shows, median net worth for white households has far exceeded that of Black households through recessions and booms over the last 30 years, while movements in white wealth are easier to see due to the larger scale. During the most recent economic downturn, median net worth declined by more for Black families, 44% decline from 2007 to 2013. There was a decline. Then for white families, 26.1% decline. So our decline hits twice as hard as our counterpart. Okay. All right. So that is, was there anything else on this? Yes. So this is good stuff too, right here. Median wealth, or the wealth of the household at the middle of a distribution, gives the experience of the typical family, but does not reflect the bulk of national wealth that is held by the richest households. White average wealth, $929,800, which is more influenced by very rich families and does not characterize the typical experience, is 6.7 times greater than Black average wealth, $138,100. White adults tend to be older, median age of 55, than African Americans, 49 years old. The older people tend to have more wealth, but Figure 2, which I'm going to show in a second, shows that the wealth gap remains when looking within age groups. The typical, so you understand, right? When the two are young, the white person and the Black person, both of them look like, hey, they look scraggly, right? They look like like a fox with no meat on the bones, right? But as they grow, one is going to start to look like a wolf, while the other continues to look like a mangy fox. Okay. The typical young adult, 18 to 34 years old, of either race has little wealth, but the gap rises quickly with age, and for 65 to 74 years old accumulates to $302,500 in median white wealth and $46,890 in median black wealth, right? So it started off right here. Here's your net worth along this axis here. Here's your age down here at the bottom. So for blacks, we start off, right? It's not, terribly far. By the time we get to between 35 and 44, right? By the time we get to 45 to 54, and then 55 to 64, we take a dip because we starting to look at diabetes. We starting to look at what's the other one? Heart problems. We starting to look at health issues that we don't have the resources to combat. Whereas they've been seeing some health issues, but they have the resources to combat. Not only do, heck, even from the government, they have the resources to combat. That's in some of the writings when you look at the crack era. Folks are thrown in jail, sentenced, and all these different things. But now, in the last 10 years, when you have the opioid crisis, they get the pen to help them overcome the addictions, right? So they continue to grow. We take a dip. And I guess, by this time, we start to realize, I'm an Israelite. Oh, I got to keep God's commandments. By this time, we're starting to realize, and so we start living a little bit better. Maybe we're not being as whorish as we were in our 20s and what have you, right? And so, okay, now we're starting to prosper a little bit. But how much more life do we have that we can accumulate to pass the baton off to the next runner on the track field, right? Whereas they've accumulated a lot. That baton they finna pass off, oh, that's a nice piece of metal they finna pass off. We passing off a wooden stick. Okay. Okay, so that was basically that. Okay, and you can read this article. I want to read this other one. This one, okay, so this article, Land and the Roots of African-American Poverty by Carrie Lay Merritt. Okay, she's a historian, independent scholar. All right. Does it say when this article was written? It doesn't say. Okay. So here's an African-American family at the Hermitage, Savannah, Georgia in 1907. Okay, let's get a good look at that family. Okay. So I'm going to assume that this is father, maybe this is wife, maybe both might be wives. I don't know. I do not know. Okay. Shortly after, let me make this large. No.
Indeed.
There we go. Shortly after emancipation in 1865, African Americans began fighting for the rights to the lands they had long worked, cultivated by their hands, fed by their sweat, and stained by their blood. Yet while the government stifled freedmen's demands for 40 acres and a mule as just compensation for generations of unpaid, brutalized slave labor, they simultaneously granted free land to whites. They simultaneously granted free land to whites. Talking about sticking the foot out, tripping the runner on the racetrack, that was huge. Okay. Indeed, when the failure of land distribution among Blacks during the Reconstruction is judged within the context of the Homestead Acts, the reality of the situation is laid bare. The problem was never the radical nature of land reform. The problem was racism, right? When judged comparatively with other nations' emancipatory histories, the Reconstruction experience in the United States is unique. While African Americans were the only freed slaves to be granted political rights so soon after emancipation, those rights were limited for a people without capital or job prospects. Land would have served as the primary source for reparations. President Abraham Lincoln signed the original Homestead Act into law during the second year of the Civil War between 1868 and 1934. It granted 246 million acres of Western land, an area close to the landmass of both California and Texas. Okay, this was, so think of the state of California, think of the state of Texas. Abraham Lincoln is giving that much land away. Giving it away. That's what the Homestead Act is all about. Giving it away to families, to individuals. Okay. To individual Americans virtually for free. To receive 160 acres of government land, 160 acres. Okay. To put that in perspective, 160 acres, put it in perspective. Up the road, where the McDonald's, the Chick-fil-A, the Bally's, is it Bally's or no, Planet Fitness, and Kmart, that lot, okay, that lot plus a little more is 200 acres. That lot plus some more, and without me pulling it up on the map, is 200 acres. So 160 plus 40 more acres is that up the road, to put it in perspective. And so if you can imagine that up there, you can see all what's happening there. A lot can be done with 160 acres. Okay, that's okay. Let's move on. To receive 160 acres of government land, claimants had to complete a three-part process. First, file an application. Easy peasy, right? Second, improve the land for 5 years. So there you are, you own the land, 5 years, and improve it. You know, get your roadways together, dig a well, improve the land, enhance the land. Third, file for the deed of ownership. That's just a little more reading and filling out a piece of paper, right? So the hardest work is number 2, but you don't care about the hardest work because that benefits you.
working hard.
right? And I have not looked at the details of improve the land, but again, right, if you've already been working hard, that's nothing. Yeah, that's nothing. Okay. Because of the date of the Act's passage, few people from the South initially received any benefit from it. Yet, given that it effectively remained in place until 1934, well over 1.5 million white families, both American-born and immigrant, eventually profited from it. 1.5 million white families got all that free land. And what she is telling us, the timing couldn't have been better. The timing in which Abraham Lincoln said, okay, let's do this. It couldn't have been better. Knowing that blacks were not educated well enough.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that dynamic there. Let's see.
Speak loud.
I was saying that dynamic right there with the criteria that they gave, the 3 criteria, telling them that they had to file these papers, do these different things. The slaves were not educated because they didn't know how to read, write, and fill out these things. So I don't know if Lincoln already knew.
He knew that,
So
of
that's
course,
why-
because the law said you better not be. Let me catch you reading.
Exactly. So what you said before, the timing of it was just right
The timing was
for the
perfect.
white.
Yeah. And you don't think that was thought out? Absolutely, that was thought out. Right?
This my part, I tried to make sure everybody,
Yeah.
I'm being linked,
Right.
make sure everyone had equal opportunity. They had their chance.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't take advantage of
They
it.
didn't take advantage of it. Here we go. And although the process was rife with fraud, as many homesteaders sold their plots to corporations, the original claimants pocketed the income from land sales, establishing a basis of wealth and capital. By the end of the act, more than 270 million acres of Western land had been transferred to individuals, almost all of whom were white. Why? Because these white people, they don't know how to develop the land. These individuals, they ain't been working the land. The Negroes been working the land. So the skills in developing the land was in the black person's hands. So the white says, okay, well, we're gonna sell it to the Andrew Carnegies and to the Rockefellers. We're gonna apply for this as an individual. I'm gonna apply for it as an individual man with wife and children, and then I'm gonna sell my 160 acres to the Rockefellers, Andrew Carnegie, to Fruit of the Loom, to Wrangler Jean. I'm gonna sell it. Mr. Shaw. I'm gonna sell it. And they'll pay me because I'm making money on top of money now because I paid nothing to acquire this. This was free land. So at best, they're buying me out of my obligation to improve the land. When I sell this land, they are buying me out of my obligation to improve the land. And then they're going to come in and they're going to build their factory. That's what they're going to do. Because they have the monies, the JP Morgans, They have the money to come in and erect
Improve.
and improve, turn into corporations. Okay. By the end of the act, more than 270 million acres of Western land had been transferred to individuals, almost all of whom were white. Nearly 10% of all the land in the entire US was given to homesteaders for little more than filing a fee. Enacted in 1866, shortly after the end of the Civil War, the Southern Homestead Act, SHA, was supposed to function much like the original act. During the first year of the SHA, unoccupied Southern land was offered exclusively to African Americans and loyal whites. But after 1867, even landless former Confederates applied. Although the SHA ostensibly offered a solution to several pressing Reconstruction era issues, in reality, a large percentage of the land offered was unfarmable, being either heavily wooded or covered with swamps. Furthermore, it was hard to administratively arrange homesteading, as many Southern states had only one land office. Depending on where the office was located, it could take several weeks to simply make the trip, meaning the bureaucratic duties cost far more than the filing fees for the actual land. You're gonna give me this land, can't do nothing with it because it's marshy. But I'm gonna try to acquire it, and shoot, I built a house on some yeah, right. Help me out. My vocabulary is gone right now.
Yeah, I was saying steel structure, that's all. You talking about keeping it up out of the water, right?
Keeping it up out the water, right? So okay. That's not, well, I'll go with that. I'll go with that word. But even still, the office is 200, 300, 500 miles away. The cost to get to the office to apply for this, I can't get to you. Is what they're saying. Right? Depending on where the office was located, it could take several weeks to simply make the trip, meaning the bureaucratic duties cost far more than the filing fees for the actual land. Furthermore, the recent and this, remember, so this was primarily for African Americans, right? That's what it says up here, that this thing right here was offered exclusively to African Americans and loyal whites. I mean, loyal whites, those who fought in the Civil War on behalf of the South, on behalf of the Confederate Army. Okay. Furthermore, the recently emancipated owned no cash, right? The Negro owned no cash and had no experience in dealing with the government, rendering the process even more difficult. But perhaps the biggest hurdle for freed people involved the year-long labor contracts they had been cajoled or forced into signing shortly after slavery was outlawed, right? Because the black codes come into play. You don't have a job, or we're gonna throw you in jail and put you on the chain gang. Oh, don't you know that's the sound, right? That's the whole point with that. So, in other words, I want to go get this land, but I'm contractually obligated to serving this man right here. I got a year-long contract, work contract, to work as a servant on his land. So now I got to find the timing. Will I miss the timing? Will I hit the timing? Not to mention all the other difficulties this article is pointing out, I got to contend with to acquire this marsh land. Right? Leaving a job before the end date of a contract frequently resulted in virtual re-enslavement on the chain gang. Indeed, Blacks have been locked into these contracts until the very date, 1st of January, 1867, that they stopped receiving special homesteading benefits. This is where the game is rigged, okay? And so that means that our great-great-great-grandparents, if they had a wooden stick to pass off to us, at best, all they could do was cut off their fingernail and say, here's some information for you, baby. I hope you do well. Remember me. You don't want to be in this situation, baby. Because what else do I have to pass off? Let me pull my fingernail off and give you that, and maybe you can acquire some information in this relic that I give you, because I don't have wealth to give you, baby. We're going back to our great grandparents, our ancestors, and that affects that generation, which affects that generation, which affects where we are today. And to say it doesn't, you're not looking at things with the right mindset. By the end of the SHA 10 years later, nearly 28,000 individuals have been awarded land, combined with the claimants of the original Homestead Act, then more than 1.6 million white families. So 2,800 individuals, or 28,000 individuals, I apologize, in comparison to 1.6 million families. That's a small number. It's a small number of our ancestors being able to acquire some land in compared to whites who acquired free land. Okay. Both native-born and immigrants succeeded in becoming landowners during the next several decades. Conversely, only 4,000 to 5,500 African-American claimants ever received final land patents from the SHA. That's even smaller than what this says up here. Okay. And a land patent, what this does, this says you own that land. It is yours. The government can't say nothing about that land. That land is yours. That's what owning and having a land patent is all about. Having a land patent says this is yours. Okay. The Homestead Acts were unquestionably the most extensive, radical, redistributive governmental policy in U.S. history. The number of adult descendants of the original Homestead Act recipients living in the year 2000 was estimated to be around 46 million people, about a quarter of the U.S. adult population. Okay, so this is the number of people who descended from those individuals. If that many white Americans can trace their legacy of wealth and property ownership to a single entitlement program, then the perpetuation of Black poverty must also be linked to national policy. See what she's saying here. She says, if white people can trace their wealth back to this single event in American history, then likewise, Black people can trace their poverty back from being shut out of this single historical US event. You with me? Okay. Indeed, the Homestead Acts excluded African Americans, not in letter, but in practice, a template that the government would propagate for the next century and a half. With the, okay, and let's get down to the punchline right here. I want to read. We're gonna read this paragraph right here. With the advent of emancipation, therefore, Blacks became the only race in the US ever to start out as an entire people with close to zero capital. With close to zero capital. Okay. Having nothing else upon which to build or generate wealth, the majority of freedmen had little real chance of breaking the cycles of poverty created by slavery and perpetuated by federal policy. The stain of slavery, it seems, is much more widespread and lasting than many Americans have admitted. Okay. And then we'll look at a couple more things, a couple more articles. So the other thing talked about was healthcare. So here is March 16th, 2023. Inequities in health insurance coverage and access for Black and Hispanic adults, the impact of medical expansion and the pandemic. Okay. So here this woman, Della Young, a kidney transplant patient with lupus, stands at her home in McDonough, Georgia on October 26, 2021. Young lost Medicaid coverage when she moved from New York to Georgia, which is one of 11 states that hasn't expanded Medicaid coverage to 138% of the poverty level, meaning Georgia. Those non-expansion states have lower rates of insurance coverage and healthcare access overall, with larger disparities between racial ethnic groups than expansion states, right? So that's this woman right here, battling the things that she's battling, okay? Let me just try to get rid of this. All right. Since its passage in 2010, the Affordable Care Act has helped cut the U.S. uninsured rate nearly in half, while significantly reducing racial and ethnic disparities in both insurance coverage and access to care, particularly in states that expanded their Medicaid programs. While much of that progress occurred between 2013 and 2016, federal data show that more than 5 million people gained coverage between 2020 and early 2022, COVID, driving the uninsured rate down to a historic low of 8%. This recent progress has been driven by federal and state policy actions that increased Medicaid and ACA marketplace coverage primarily, a recruitment in the Families First Coronavirus Response Act of 2020 that states keep people with Medicaid coverage continuously enrolled during COVID-19 public health emergencies in exchange for greater federal fund. additional states expanding eligibility for their Medicaid programs, enhanced marketplace premium subsidies, okay? So those are the reasons why we need to do it. In this brief, we update our 2020 and 2021 analysis of coverage and access inequities for Black and Hispanic adults in the U.S. during using 2013-21 data from the American Community Survey, okay? Let's look at some of the highlights, I think. Let me see. No. What was that? Bear with me. Okay. I think it was just the opening that I wanted to show, to kind of show that, hey, even healthcare is still current issues. That's what I was after. All right. And last little thing. Race for results. This is now we're dealing with education. 2024 Race for Results, building a pathway to opportunity for all children. Posted January 10th, 2024. Okay. The summary of this report: the Annie E. Casey Foundation has released its latest Race for Results report a decade after its inaugural publication, revealing progress in some areas, but persistent disparities for children of color in the United States. The report utilizes Casey's Race for Results index based on 12 indicators of child and youth well-being, showing that improvements have been made in at least 6 out of 11 comparable indicators across racial and ethnic groups over the past decade. Despite this progress, the nation falls short in adequately preparing children to achieve crucial milestones, with no racial or ethnic group coming close to the maximum score of 1,000 on the index. The report emphasizes the need for targeted investments in children of color to eliminate long-standing barriers and addresses specific needs. While there has been an increase in attention to the circumstances and needs of young people, disparities persist. The national index scores range from 386 for Black children, remember the top score is 1,000, to 771 for Asian and Pacific Islander children. State level variations indicate that experiences differ widely based on location, with Vermont, New Jersey, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine having the highest index scores and smallest gaps among racial and ethnic groups. Okay, so here it is. This is what it looks like on a national scope. So you zoom out and you look at the numbers on a national level. This is what it looks like. Blacks, you score 386 out of 1,000. Native Americans, which belong to the tribe of Gad, 418. Latino, which belong to the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh primarily, 452. And then they included a new category, 2 or more races. So we don't know who you are in this category. We just know that, you know, you got a Black mama, you got a white daddy, you got a
so-called mix.
yeah. Okay. All right. So now let's go here, because here's the actual document. Here's the actual document. Okay. So let's uh right here. That's what I want to show. So race for results index indicators. Okay. Early childhood. Babies born at normal birth rate. This is the category. This is the year 2021. This is all in 91.5. This is the normal birth. Okay. For Native Americans, for GAD, 91.9. Blacks, 85.3. Babies are not born in the same likeness as the overall. They're smaller. Babies are born smaller. Okay. Latino, 92.2. White, 93.0. Children of immigrant families, 92.1. Judah, you're born smaller. Why is this? Is this because you're not receiving the prenatal care you should? Is this because you don't have the proper diet during the 9 months that you're carrying? Is that the issue? Is this because some of your practices, such as smoking cigarettes, smoking marijuana, smoking blunts and whatnot, are these contributing factors? What is the it factor why you you are giving birth to babies that are smallest of the babies here in America for the year 2021? Okay. Now we get to children ages 3 to 5 enrolled in nursery school, preschool, or kindergarten between the years 2017 to 21, right? 58 is the count, is the score. That's the score. Okay. 56 among Native Americans, 59 among Blacks. So we're on par with our counterpart, right? 59. Asian folks, 61% of 61. I don't know if this is percentage. Oh, it is percentage. This is percentage. 61% send their children, have their babies ages 3 to 5 in some kind of academic rigorous activity. Okay. But Latino, meaning Ephraim, they like how we got to get better at birth. Our Latino, we got to get better at educating them at early age. Okay. Education and early work experience. This is where it gets kind of depressing. Fourth graders who scored at or above proficient in reading 2022. Okay. Overall, 32%. And that 32% is because of the low scores from the other categories, bringing the overall down. Right? So here in this first Native American, GAD, right, they're 18%. So they struggling. 55% for Asians, 16% for Blacks. Reading at or above proficient in the fourth grade. And why is that? Is it because there's not enough material being provided to that 9-year-old, 8-year-old, where that 9-year-old can see himself or herself in the pages of the book. Is this a factor? Is it because of the teachers? Because the teaching force is, I'm going to throw out a number, fact check me, is like 80% Caucasian nationwide. Nationwide, the teaching force is like 80% Caucasian. Fact check me, because I'm going off the top of my head. And then, 20% for our Latinos, 8th graders who score proficient in math, 9%. We suffer. High school students graduating on time. Well, we are graduating. We graduate. We got that going for us. We improving. Okay, but it's still, in comparison to our counterpart, it's low. It's low. Young adults age 19 to 26 who are in school or working, 76%. We are near the bottom. We're second from the last. Young adults 25 to 29 who have completed an associate's degree or higher, we are third from last. We are third from last. So we're not, we're not going beyond high school. Family resources. Okay. I just thought this was a very interesting thing to look at. Okay. This family resources, this is passing the baton. This is passing the baton to the next generation. Female ages 15 and 19 who delay childbearing until adulthood. Right? That's pretty much all the same, equal. Children who live with a householder who has at least a high school diploma. They're not, it's kind of all right in there. Children who live in 2-parent families. Well, Native Americans drop. Blacks, we at the bottom of the list. 39% live in two family households. We can't stay together. We can't work out our differences. Whatever the difference is between that man and that woman, we can't stay together. Children living at or above 200% of poverty. And again, we and Native Americans, we're at the bottom of the list. Okay. All right. So that is that. Now, and this article, going back to the original article, it also touches on racial discrimination in the criminal legal system. I don't believe we're going to have time to get into that. So mass incarceration is talked about. Youth incarceration is talked about. Youth injustice. Criminalization of poverty, homelessness, trying to make bail and you homeless, trying to pay fines and you homeless, trying to, and being criminalized because you homeless, because you sleeping over here in this tent and the city ordinance says you can't sleep here in a tent. Now you got a ticket and now you need someone's address for them to send the ticket to. What's your address so we can send you the ticket? Oh, you don't have it? Oh, okay, you go to jail. Huh?
The blue tent.
The blue tent. Right? So probation and parole. Okay. Reentry issues, impact of criminal records on housing and unemployment. Now I gotta, every time I fill out an application, I gotta put on the application that I have been convicted of a federal crime, of a state crime, of a, what have you, that I've spent 3 years in jail, that I spent 5 years in jail, and these things hamper employment opportunities. Okay. Racist drug laws and racism in public health approaches, right? Crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. You get higher sentence for crack cocaine than you do powder cocaine. So I'm just prison labor. I'm just showing the different pieces because we don't have time to go through the article. So if you're interested, let me go back to the very top of the page so that you can write down the title of the article if you want to pull it up and look at the article again. Racial discrimination in the United States. Okay, August 8th, 2022. So you push, you're at home, push the pause button, write it down, pull it up. All right. Now, let's get into some scriptures. Because at the end of the day, we want to look at our situation and examine the Bible for solutions. Examine the Bible to understand the problems we face. What does the Bible say about the problems? Does it tell us that we are going to face these various problems? Does it provide us with any kind of glimmer of hope to these kinds of problems that we face? Everything we just read was secular, describing what is the reality of today. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 30, verses 1 through 2. Okay. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 1. Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. That word woe means destruction. That's what the word woe means. The rebellious children is speaking about the children of Israel, you so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, which the articles we were reading was talking about Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Verse 2, that walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. And that's the problem. In the one article we read, I forget what we were reading. I was talking about reparations. I think that was near the beginning of our discussion, our class. That here we're going down, we're looking for reparations. We're still going to the government with a handout. Did we ever once turn to our Father, our Father which is in heaven, and say, what shall I do, Lord? He told us, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15. He told us in Deuteronomy 28:15, But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Right? And so curses, we read about curses, verse 16 through verse 68. And all these curses came upon us and has overtaken us. Like in particular, let's look at one. I believe 38, I think, is what I want. I didn't write this down. Yeah, 44. Okay. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. That, coming out of Civil War, coming out of slavery, those contracts, that was him lending to us. But we ain't in no position to lend to him. In zero position are we in to lend to him. And this day in 2024, we are still the tail. We are the tail. Right? Some of the articles that we read, let's go to 38. Okay. Thou shalt carry much seed out into the field, and shalt gather but little in, for the locusts shall consume it. Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shalt neither drink of the wine, nor gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat them. All our toil we did in the time period of slavery, and now coming out of slavery, time period of Reconstruction, we looking to take our skills and put it to use for ourselves. Nope, no good. Okay, go to Psalms chapter 61, verse 4. Psalms chapter 61, verse 4. I will abide in thy tabernacle forever. I will trust in the covert of thy wings. Okay, let's look up that word covert. Let's look that word up. Let's go to dictionary.com. Okay. Definition number 2 means shelter. Definition number 5, a shelter or hiding place. Definition number 4, a covering. Okay. With this in mind, let's go to this again. This is not in my notes. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 11. And verse 4. Is it 4? Nope. Yes, starting at verse 3. Okay. But I would have you know, this is 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3. Actually, you know what? Even better, I'd like to start at verse 1. This is Paul speaking. Paul says, be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ. Right? Paul, perhaps the most prolific writer of the New Testament. The vast majority of the New Testament is the contribution of Paul. He says, be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ. Now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things and keep the ordinances, that's a law, as I delivered them to you. Then he goes on, verse 3. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. So there's order. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head, for that is even all one, as if she were shaven. So that head covering that the woman puts on her head, that physical, tangible fabric that she puts on her head, is symbolic to the husband being over her, because in verse 3, we see that there's order. Christ is the head over the man. Christ is the covering to the man. And the man is the covering, the protection over the woman, of the woman. And then the children fall in play under that. So, and if we are following Paul, Paul follows Christ, then we're following the teachings, so that the husband is teaching the wife according to thus saith the Lord, which means that the wife is teaching the children thus saith the Lord, which from there, culture is being established. What is culture? Culture are your beliefs, your practices, your way of doing. Culture, right? If we implement this one thing, we can improve our race. Just this one thing, we can improve our race. The article said family resources, children who live in two-parent families, we're 39% of that. And that's for the years 2017 to 2021. So obviously, we're at the bottom of the list. Obviously, we are not applying this right here. At some level, we're not applying 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Whoever the blame is on, the man, the woman, both of you, wherever the blame lies, this is not happening. And the reality comes out in secular documents showing us the effects. Go to Psalms chapter 92, verse 13. Okay. It reads, those that be planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. We have to be planted in the house of the Lord. Our understanding, our way of life must start in the soil, S-O-I-L, of the Lord, meaning right here. Meaning right here. Our way of life has to start right here in the Word of God. Okay? Go to Hebrews chapter 6, verse 18. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 18. That by two immutable things in which it was impossible for God to lie, we might have a strong consolation who have fled for refuge to lay hold upon the hope set before us, right? Bible says God cannot tell a lie. So if God promised that he would be our covering, if we put ourselves with what we just read, let me pull that passage up one more time. Let me pull that passage where we just left. We were in Psalms 92:13. Okay. So right here is the statement of promise. This is a statement of promise. Psalms 92:13. This is a statement of promise. Those that be planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. So if this is a statement of promise, and then we get Hebrews 6 and 18, that by two immutable things in which it was impossible for God to lie. So the Bible says it's impossible for him to lie. He told us, he gave us what did I just call it? A statement of promise. Okay. He just gave us a statement of promise. So what are we going to do? Are we going to live in this statement of promise, or are we going to live in doubt of what's spoken, what's written, what's documented for us? Okay. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 6, verse 18. Hebrews 6 and 18?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Isaiah 32. Thank you, sir. Isaiah 32, verse 1 and 2. Okay. Behold, a king shall reign in righteousness, and princes shall rule in judgment. This too is a statement of promise. This is a statement of promise. Behold, a king shall reign in righteousness. Who is that king? Christ. Christ. Princes shall rule in judgment. Who are the princes? We, the 144,000. 12,000 from each tribe. Verse 2. A man shall be as an hiding place from the wind, and a covered from the tempest. Tempest is the weather. As rivers of water in a dry place, as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land. This is where you men of Israel, this is the place you have to get to. No matter how ragged you are right now, $17,000 worth of wealth, no education, no matter what, we got to get on board. And if all you pass into the next generation is this word right here, this is the greatest wealth to pass to the next generation. This is the starting block. This is the concrete, the foundation where we start. Okay? Because the brothers, we got to get back on point. Let's go to Zechariah chapter 9, verse 12. Zechariah chapter 9, verse 12. Turn you to the stronghold, ye prisoners of hope. Right? What is the stronghold? Again, the word of God, Christ, all the promises that are documented for us. Ye prisoners of hope. Who are the prisoners of hope? We are the children of Israel. We who believe. And those who yet don't believe, you need to repent now. Even today do I declare that I will render double unto thee. This is the Bible. Even today do I declare that I will render double unto thee. I'm going to enhance you. I'm going to advance you. I'm going to improve you. I'm going to prosper you. I'm going to enrich you. This is the promise. This is the promise. Okay? Go to Proverbs chapter 4, verse 13. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 13. Take fast hold of instruction. Let her not go. Keep her, for she is thy life. Right? What instruction? Starting off with the Bible. Starting off with the knowledge of God. Starting off with the laws, the ordinances, the statutes, the commandments. Starting off with. Go to, I didn't write this down. Go to Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6, I think. Yep, Hosea 4 and 6. Again, I didn't write it down. I apologize. Come on. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget thy children. Right? What you mean I'm gonna forget your children? You don't have a baton to pass off to the next generation. The next generation starts off in negative with negative gain. And the generation after that, negative gain. And now you are in this everlasting cycle of negative prosperity. Michael, those words don't even go together. Sure it does. Meaning you are forever growing yourself into death. You are forever prospering yourself into that which will not come to nothing but death and destruction. Okay. Let's now go to Isaiah chapter 56, verse 4. Isaiah chapter 56, verse 4. But thus saith the Lord unto the eunuchs that keep my Sabbaths and choose the things that please me and take hold of my covenant, right? Eunuchs are individuals whose members, bodily members, have been compromised such that they are unable to continue to produce life.
Yeah.
A following a second generation, another seed. Okay. He says, even unto, here we are, verse 5. Let me start back at verse 3. Right? This is Isaiah chapter 56, verse 3. This is a beautiful passage. Let me go to verse 1. I apologize. I'm just finding this to be more beautiful now as I'm just overlooking it than when I was putting it together. This is Isaiah chapter 56, verse 1. Thus saith the Lord, keep ye judgment and do justice, for my salvation is near to come. And looking at the secular data, we are in need of salvation and my righteousness to be revealed. We don't know how to practice righteousness. So we have to learn what is righteousness. He says, my righteousness is to be revealed. Blessed is the man that doeth this, and the Son of Man that layeth hold on it. That's a blessed individual. When you learn this and then you hold on to it, meaning you begin to apply it to your everyday life, that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and keepeth his hand from doing any evil. Neither let the son of the stranger hath joined himself to the Lord speak, saying, the Lord hath utterly separated me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. Why are you saying I'm a dry tree? Because he can't reproduce. Right? I'm worthwhile. I'm not worthwhile. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm good for nothing. A dry tree. Verse 4. For thus saith the Lord unto the eunuchs that keep my Sabbaths. Here comes a promise. And choose the things that please me, and take hold of my covenant. Even unto them will I give in mine house and within my walls a place and a name better than of sons and of daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. So now conversation is moving into regeneration. The conversation is moving into immortality. The conversation is moving into salvation, because what is salvation? Salvation is those things that deal with regeneration. Salvation is those things that deal with coming back into betterness, coming back into heaven, coming back into everlasting life. An everlasting life where God's kingdom will reign the entire globe. Reign, rule over, supersede, whatever word you want to use, just to understand the point. Okay? Go to Psalms 111, verse 2. Psalms 111, verse 2. The works of the Lord are great, sought out of all them that have pleasure therein. So all the works of the Lord, there's a lot. There is knowledge of the laws, knowledge of prophecy, knowledge of sociology. Because when we read about Noah, when we read about Samson, when we read about Abraham, when we read about David, Solomon, when we read about Ruth and Boaz, we're reading elements of sociology. We're reading elements of culture, the way they lived their daily life, the way they did things, the way they went about their days. When we read about Zechariah and his wife, Elizabeth, in Luke, understanding that the two of them, Bible says they were without sin. You know, that's in the New Testament before we get deep into the story of Christ. Because in the Christian world, they'll argue and say Jesus Christ is the only person that was without sin. No, but right there at the beginning of Luke chapter 1, verse 5, it says that Elizabeth and that Zechariah and Elizabeth were perfect. They were walking in all the commandments of the Lord. Right? So the works of the Lord are great. Okay? Let's go to I want you to write this. No, not yet. Not yet. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 3, verse 13 through 18. Okay, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 13 through 18. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. In her ways are, her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is everyone that retaineth her. Right? Wisdom, right? But I want you to write down, because we read in Psalms 111, verse 2. Come on, computer. Psalms 111, verse 2, the works of the Lord. I want you to write down the word mathematics. Mathematics. Math, you can shorthand it. Arithmetic. Right? Length of days are in her right hand. Well, length of days, that's That's measuring. That's mathematics. That's counting. That's mathematics. Let's go to Psalms. Psalms chapter 90, verse 12. Okay. Psalms chapter 90, verse 12. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Teach us to number. Teach us to number. One of the passages in the Bible tells us that when we read the laws at the beginning of class, week over week over week over week over week over week over week, it tells us that we're supposed to map out the annual calendar. Annually, we're supposed to map out the calendar so that we know, okay, this is what's going on these next 12 months. This next time period, this is what's going on. Teach us to number our days. This is a law. Well, I'm sorry. This is not a law. This is a prayer. I apologize. This is a prayer. Okay. But the Bible teaches us how to count, how to number our days. In Genesis, in Sirach, we learn how to count our days. Okay. Go to 1 Kings. 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 2 through 3. 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 2 through 3. And the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, the length thereof was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 20 cubits, and the height thereof 30 cubits. And the porch before the temple of the house, 20 cubits was the length thereof, according to the breadth of the house. And 10 cubits was the breadth thereof before the house. So, in terms of designing the plan, having an architectural plan, and being able to execute that plan, Solomon was wise in mathematics, in geometry. Okay? So that he could build a house for the Lord and have his own house built likewise. We need to start training our children these skills from the moment they are born, starting with the laws. That's from day one, starting with the laws. You know, you teach your young child from day one law you will teach that child in the first year of their life is that you will learn how to go a day without eating anything. Why? Because when we count the days and we map out that calendar, there is one day on the calendar called Day of Atonement. So guess what? Within that 12-month span of that child's first life, within 12 months, whether the child hits it at the beginning of the 12 months or the end of the 12 months, it all depends on when that child was born. Because it happens every year between late September, mid-October. Every single year. So depending on when that child was born, that child is going to experience 24-hour span of not getting any food, you teaching that child, you're going to fear the Lord. You ain't talk to the child. You just, by actions, you taught that child, you're going to learn to fear the Lord. Okay? Go to Genesis chapter 6, verse 15 through 16. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, and the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. So what are we building? This is an ark that we're building. But what's the point? The first example that we gave in 1 Kings is the construction of buildings. Now here's the construction of other devices. This is an ark. This is a boat. This is something to be used for in transportation on waterways. What's the point? We're to build all using knowledge from the Lord. We build technological things. The Lord has, in the Bible, we see technology at work. In the article that we read, one of the articles talked about technologies we are suffering. Okay? Go to Luke chapter 14, verse 28. Luke chapter 14, verse 28. For which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? So what is this saying? We have to have the skills to be able to plan and to calculate, to count the cost of what an enterprise is going to take. What does it take to start a healthcare business for our aging family members? What does it take to start a food service business for those belonging to our community? We have to be able to, we need the knowledge and understanding for how to plan, how to calculate the costs. What are the factors involved for that business to thrive, to be successful? Okay? All right. Now, let's get Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Now I'm about to give you another word after we read this one. So we have mathematics. I'm about to give you another word after we read Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Right? And where am I coming from with these words? Because Psalms 111 and 2, Psalms 111 verse 2 said, the works of the Lord are great, sought out of them, sought out of all them that have pleasure therein. So mathematics being one of those things that we turn to the Lord for understanding, comprehension, to grow in. Now let's go to Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. Write this word down. Ecology. 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 Okay? Why? Because God just instructed us that we are to have dominion over all living things on the planet, which requires us to have knowledge. If we're going to manage all these things, we have to have knowledge of how these things, what is the best environment for them to grow, so that they grow and reproduce and not die. Or how do we contain them growing at a rate that is balanced and not overgrowth to a point of now we got problems. Now we have problems in the waters, problems on the land, problems in the air with birds, and problems with insects being overpopulated, locusts being overpopulated. How do we balance these things? How do we keep it balanced? We have to study and understand ecology. Okay, let's get a definition, a working definition for ecology. Come on, computer. Come on. Here we go. This is according to dictionary.com. A branch of biology dealing with the relations and interactions between organisms and their environment, including other organisms. A branch of biology dealing with the relations and interactions between organisms and their environment, including other organisms. Okay? Now, let's go to Job chapter 5, verse 23. For thou shalt be in a league, Job chapter 5, verse 23. For thou shalt be in a league with the stones of the field, and the beasts of the field shall be at peace with thee. Right? So if we're managing these things, the Bible says that we're going to be in league. League means in fellowship, shaking of hands, in league with the stones of the field. So you think that boulder is in your way? No, God just said, no, I'm going to make it such that boulder, I'm going to give you the wisdom and understanding to maneuver that boulder where it needs to be, to get it out of the way. And the beast of the field shall be at peace with thee. You afraid of the lion? You're afraid of the jaguar? You're afraid of the different beasts? No. The beasts, they're not going to bother you. Don't you worry about black bears. I got you covered. I'm going to give you wisdom that you move into that area so that you can manage that area properly. Okay, let's go to Leviticus chapter 26, verse 6. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 6. And I will give peace in the land, and ye shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid. And I will rid evil beasts out of the land, neither shall the sword go through your land. When is this? When we are obedient, when we are following and keeping the commandments of the Most High God, following his ordinances and statutes and keeping them, adhering to them in our everyday life, such that it is a part of our culture. Okay? Go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a seed of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. So it's not just animal husbandry that we have to be wise. We have to be wise about the vegetation. We have to understand different plants. What are the characteristics of this plant? What are the characteristics of this plant, and what does it mean? How does it benefit me? Or how does this plant work against me? Do you know that poison ivy has medicinal practical effects? What about, did you know that the rose plant has medicinal practical applications? That's what I meant to say, applications, right? If we don't study the characteristics of these things, then how will we know? We have to study it, write it down, and then that becomes the baton we pass off to the next generation. That becomes the baton that we pass off to the next generation. Go to Psalms 115, verse 16. The heaven, even the heavens are the Lord's, but the earth hath he given to the children of men. This is our home right here, earth. We will not dwell in heaven. When you die, oh, I'm dying. Oh, she's in a better place. She's in heaven. No, no, no. That's Christianity. That is Christianity. When you die, you go to a place. When you die, absent from the body, present with the Lord. When you die, you're judged. When you die, you return back into the earth. What is the timing of all of that? What I just spoke? I don't know. I don't know. Does it take 5 years, 100 years? I don't know. I don't know. But I do know, based on Job, based on Ecclesiastes, based on Exodus, based on multiple passages throughout the Bible, when you die, you go to your body goes into a grave. You go to a resting place. You go to sleep. When you die, you go and you stand before God to be judged. When you die, you return back into the earth. That I know and understand. Timing, I am not qualified to talk about timing. I can tell you that according to Exodus, it's within the third and fourth generation, according to Exodus. I can tell you that. Other than that, I am not qualified to speak about. The Lord has not given me that wisdom. But this is where we conduct our daily life activities on earth. Go to Psalms 104, verse 14 through 15. He causes the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. So what plants are medicinal? What plants are food? What plants are good for ointments? He says he causes the grass to grow for the cattle and herb for the service of man. Ointments, salves, ain't that how you say the word? Or is it salve? S-L-A-V? No, that's Slav. Okay, forgive me. I forget right now. But hopefully you at home, you know what I'm trying to say. Verse 15. And wine that maketh glad the heart of man, and oil to make his face to shine, and bread which strengtheneth man's heart. And all those things in verse 15 grew out of the ground. Wine comes from the grapes. Oil came from some vegetable, some fruit, olives, avocado, something. And bread that was some kind of grain, oats, barley, wheat, all these things. And do we fully understand the characteristics and properties of these things? Which is why we need to understand ecology. Okay. One more on ecology. Go to Psalms 145, verse 15 through 16. Did I give that one out? Nope. Okay. The eyes of all wait upon thee, and thou givest them their meat in due season. Thou openest thine hand and satisfiest the desire of every living thing. So we turn to the Lord for wisdom in mathematics. We turn to the Lord in wisdom of ecology. And now we lean on the Lord, trusting that in due season, he will give us our meat, that we are satisfied in our everyday living. Okay? Write this down. The arts, music, art, crafts, the arts. Go to Exodus chapter 35. We're going to read verses 4 through, we're going to start at verse 4. Okay. And Moses spake unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, this is the thing which the Lord commanded, saying, take ye from among you an offering unto the Lord. Whosoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it. An offering of the Lord, gold and silver and brass and purple and blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen, goat's hair and ram skins, dyed red and badger skin and shittim wood, and oil for the light and spices for anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, and onyx stones and stones to be set for the ephod and for the breastplate. And every wise-hearted among you shall come, and every wise-hearted among you shall come and make all that the Lord hath commanded. The tabernacle, his tent and his covering, his thatches and his boards and his bars, his pillars and his sockets, the ark and the staves thereof, with the mercy seat and the veil of the covering, the table and his staves and all the vessels and the showbread, the candlestick also with the light and his furniture and his lamps with the oil for the light, and the incense altar and his staves and the anointing oil and the sweet incense and the hanging for the door at the entering in of the tabernacle, the altar of burnt offering with his brazen grate, his staves and all his vessels, the laver and his foot, the hangings of the court, his pillars and his sockets, and the hanging of the door of the court, the pins of the tabernacle and the pins of the court, and their cords, the cloths of service to do service in the holy place, the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons to minister in the priest's office. And all the congregation of the children of Israel departed from the presence of Moses. And they came, everyone whose heart stirred him up, and everyone whom his spirit made willing, and they brought the Lord's offering to the work of the tabernacle of the congregation, and for all his service, and for the holy garments. And they came both men and women. They came both men and women. They came both men and women, as many as were willing hearted, and brought bracelets and earrings and rings and tablets and jewels of gold. And every man that offered an offering of gold unto the Lord. And every man with whom was found blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair and red skins of ram and badger skins brought them. Every one that did offer an offering of silver and brass brought the Lord's offering. And every man with whom was found shittim wood for any work of the service brought it. And all the women that were wise-hearted did spin with their hands and brought that which they had spun, both of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and of fine linen. And all the women whose heart stirred them up in wisdom spun goat's hair. And the rulers brought onyx stone and stones to be set for the ephod and for the breastplate, and spice and oil for the light, and for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense. The children of Israel brought a willing offering unto the Lord, every man and woman whose heart made them willing to bring for all manner of work which the Lord had commanded to be made by the hand of Moses. And Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, The Lord hath called by name Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of of the tribe of Judah. And he hath filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom, in understanding, and in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship, and to devise curious works, to work in gold and silver and brass, and in the cutting of stones, to set them, and in the carving of wood, to make any manner of cunning work. And he hath put in his heart that he may teach both he and Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan. Them hath he filled with wisdom of heart to work all manner of work of the engraver, and of the cunning workman, and of the embroiderer, in blue and in purple, in scarlet and in fine linen, of the weaver, even of them that do any work, and of those that devise cunning work. Okay? So this is nation building time. This is no time to be complaining about the situation. Sure, we can identify what is going on in our life right now, 2024. We have to turn to the Lord and pray, and with the internet and the secular information allowed us to see that some of us don't have access to technology, to the internet. So there's a lot of work that we have to do to overcome. But running to Egypt with your hand out, big and Pharaoh, no. Let's turn to the Lord. Let's, with uplifted hands, turn to him, plead to him our case, our cause. And let's close out with Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Okay? Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are good report, are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Think on these things. Okay? All right. Okay. So we pray that everything that we covered today, empowers you to move in a direction that allows you to turn towards God. If you're not here with us, you need to reach out, find out how to come and fellowship with us. We are here every Saturday, which is the Sabbath day, which is the Lord's day. Okay? You need to reach out. Shalom, Most High in Christ bless. Until we meet again, like, subscribe, share this video with a family member, with an aunt, an uncle, a brother, a sister, whoever. Until we meet again, shalom.